Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. Want to start off where we started off yesterday. Some good news. Yesterday I talked about the fact that the Pennsylvania Afl-Cio elected a new president, and it was my view that that new president was abusive to his workers, especially the female workers. I came out and I said, I find him intolerable. I find him unacceptable in that position, and his past behavior should preclude him from that position, and I want him to resign or to be removed immediately. News to report, there is an investigation, and that investigation could lead to his removal, as I have been told. Mission accomplished, step one. As I'm told, workers in that workplace who've worked there under his control for the last couple of decades, they are going to have their voices heard and have the opportunity to confront the abuse that they suffered and have him held accountable. And that, my friends, that is what we need to do more of. And that is why I believe another reason why every worker needs to have a union in the workplace, especially when you work for a union. So I wish them the best. I hope more workers come forward and share their stories and hold their bosses accountable. And I hope this one gets everything he absolutely justly deserves. Let's move on to the big story of the day. Big story of the day, Amazon. First unionized Amazon in the country, organized by a guy that Amazon fired. What kind of a payback is that? Man, I got to tell you, I am envious on so many levels. And Christian Small, you are today's working class hero. And I think you're going to be that working class hero. You're going to be up there probably for the rest of the year. I think we just give you the crown right now. The official vote went 2,654 workers in favor of joining a union at Amazon at JFK 8 warehouse in Staten Island, New York. 2,131 workers against. And Amazon did everything that they could. The playbook was wide open. The money was flowing to the union busting consultants and harassment masters, and they still pulled it out. And I love the quote, and the quote of the day. The quote of the day from Chris Smalls. We want to thank Jeff Bezos for going to space, because while he was up there, we were organizing a union, and good on him. Now, like I said, he was fired back in 2020 for organizing a union. And what did he do? As president of the Amazon Labor Union, he organized the first Amazon. Now, the question is, big unions, my Teamsters union, what lessons can we learn from Chris Smalls? I think the first one is you got to get on the ground. You got to get there. You got to build relationships. Organizing is all local. It's all building those relationships. It's being in the workplace. You heard stories of they would show up and bring food, and it was a constant engagement. It's that kind of being part of the community. It's that kind of stuff, and good on him. Now the hard work begins. I mean, winning the election, that was a Herculean leap. Now the other side of this, and where I think the larger unions are probably going to play something in this, and we're going to talk about this later in the program with our labor scholar, Shaun Richman, is getting that first contract. This is where corporate America has the pendulum swung way too far to their side, because they can draw this out, and they do. They use every trick in the book to stall and delay and make it almost impossible. which is why I go back to the Employee Free Choice Act that, Barack Obama told me twice we were getting. Shook my hand twice. In fact, softest hands of any human being I've ever met. But said to me twice, we're going to get something better. And sadly got nothing. But in that Employee Free Choice Act, for those who remember, there was first contract arbitration, which I am a fan of. If you can't get that first contract hammered out within 90 days, it probably means you're not going to get it, which is why there has to be a mechanism to make sure that it happens. Because the employer understands the longer they can draw things out, the more they can get rid of people, the more you get the attrition where the most ardent folks leave, the better they got to maybe get a revote, decertify, the more you get, whatever they want. So this is a huge win. Celebrate today. And then look, they were popping champagne, as they should. A victory, historic victory. But the hard work begins. And this message today, this message, an important one, because it is about jobs. And a couple of lessons out of this: we need better labor laws. Shouldn't be this difficult. Should not. Now, speaking of jobs, big jobs number. Big jobs number. 431,000 jobs added in March. Evidently, employers added more jobs in March than all but 1 month of the decade-long expansion of the tens. That's pretty impressive. All during the Obama, as the economy was growing and when Trump was telling us how wonderful things were during his tenure, 431,000, a pretty sizable jump. Now, the number of folks who entered the labor force, that rose as well. You have 418,000 more. We now have of adults in the labor force, 60.1%. This is the highest number since the pandemic. In that prime working age area of 25 to 54, you now have worker participation at over 80%. Now, remember, this is one of those weird, interesting moments because the Republican folk, they were saying, well, you need to cut unemployment benefits and we need to do all this stuff to force people back to work. And just think, you just had to offer a little bit better wages and a little bit benefits because wages have gone up a little bit, about 5.6% over the last year. Still not enough, but better. Inflation's still going up, but here's the good news. The good news is we're not seeing the inflationary spiraling of both wages and prices. So maybe we're going to be okay. Now, unemployment down to 3.6%, fell 0.2%. This is the lowest percentage since any time, I guess, during the last expansion. I mean, it's pretty impressive. And the thing that gets me, and this is what blows my mind in all of this. You listen to right-wing blather, and it's all bad. Oh my gosh, this is the worst economy ever. The economy is horrible. It's terrible. Yet, we've got a jobs boom. Manufacturing jobs are up. There are jobs out there to be had. And yet, the doom and gloomers, unemployment's 3.6%. But somehow, if you listen to the right wing, Joe Biden's the weakest economy ever. It's horrible. And this is one of those things where I'm confused at the world that they live in. Because we're seeing a very good economy. Now we've got to get our supply chain issues taken care of. And I think the president's doing something about that, especially on the energy front. I think releasing, and I said this before, I would be releasing large amounts of oil from the strategic reserve, only I wouldn't be doing a million barrels a day. for the next 6 months. I wouldn't do it that way. Too predictable. I would do 10 million here, 20 million here. I would send shocks to the system so that the gamblers on Wall Street, the speculators, so that they take a beating. Because they've been screwing us for so long. It's time to give them a little of their own medicine. Now, oil prices per barrel plummeted. But here's the weird thing. It's strange to me how the barrel price is lower now. But at the pump, oddly enough, barely changed. How is that? Oh, that's right. The profits. Got to make the profits. And this is where the other side of this is. If I were the president, I'd be pushing for a windfall profits tax without question. During this very difficult time, and this is what I would be making the argument. During this difficult time where American families are having to tighten their belt, where they've got to struggle to put gas in the tank, to get to work, to do those essential patriotic jobs that we all said were so important. We need a little help from the oil companies. We need a little help from our friends on Wall Street. We need a little help from the billionaire class. We're going to lower those gas prices one way or another. We're going to lower those grocery prices one way or another. Whether corporate America is going to do it voluntarily or we're going to tax some of your profits. This is what having a high tax rate of the past used to do. This is what it did. You weren't getting it anyway, so you just... It's amazing to me. Because we're told, well, if you tax them too much, they won't do anything, which isn't true. Here, if you tax them 100%, of course, they're going to do nothing because they're going to get nothing. That's reality. But nobody's talking about that. I'm not even talking about the good socialist President Dwight David Eisenhower's tax code, which was 92% for the top marginal tax rate and 56% corporate rate. Not even talking anywhere near that. Biden was talking 20% minimum tax on billionaires, over $100 million in a year. They're talking about going back to 28% corporate tax, literally half of what it was during the Eisenhower years, and can't get that done because taxed enough already. It's crazy. It's crazy the world that we live in. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. If you got a thought, question, comment, you want to weigh in. If someone's been harassing you at work, I'd love to hear it, especially a boss. Let us know. Also, if you've missed any of our program, podcast. I'm sure I hear we have a great podcast. And you can get it just about anywhere. I've been told it's just about everywhere. All you have to do is look for The Rick Smith Show wherever you get podcasts, and it's right there. Quick break, right back. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. Generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Quote of the day, another one. Evidently, Roger Stone's going to back up Madison Cawthorn. And here are 2 peas in a pod, really. These two. Evidently, Roger Stone is saying that he can tell you firsthand, that the orgies and cocaine those parties actually happen. He said that Madison Cawthorn told me yesterday that he had not retracted what he said. And yeah, are there those parties in probably every state across the country? I'm sure. I'm sure there are. I'm sure that in the circles that Madison Cawthorn runs in, I'm sure that yeah, I'm sure. I'm not quite sure why he would say that though. I'm not. Was it bragging? I'm confused. And here's a guy who I think, and this is quite serious. This is why immaturity in the halls of power is so dangerous. This is why someone who really has never done anything or knows anything shouldn't be anywhere near things that need to be done. Same thing with the other clown shows. I want serious people with actual agendas on how to get things done. Not destroyers. Not people who want to be reality stars. Just a thought. Got an email that I got a couple of them. I love my email box because it's always a potpourri of wonderful and horrible and all of that. But Rita writes, love your show. My significant other is a Teamster, driving locally for many years. In the evening when your show comes on the radio, I go in the other room so I can listen uninterrupted. Very nice, thank you. Telling him that I need to spend time with Rick Smith, my other trucker friend. Very nice. I have several friends and family members that belong to various unions. Unfortunately, here it comes, a few of them take advantage of all the benefits that the unions have provided them, but then vote for Republicans, believing their narratives. Some have gone down the rabbit hole into conspiracy theory land. I just don't get it. Sad. And the truth of the matter is, you're right. I know lots of them. And George Meany, who was the head of the Afl-Cio back in the 60s and 70s, he had a great saying, how do you get someone to go on strike when they're making 10 grand a year? Meaning that they've done so well for union members, that they've made their lives so comfortable that they're not willing to do the things that made their lives comfortable, like go on strike, on their weekend off, go and walk a picket line with other people. We've forgotten what it took to get where a lot of us fortunately are. And you're right. We'll take the benefits. We'll take the extra pay. We'll do all of that stuff because then we start to feel entitled because we deserve it, because somehow we're superior. Instead of thinking about the people who fought and bled and in some cases died for what's in that contract. And Rita, you're spot on. I mean, you get to some of these folks who've fallen down these rabbit holes, who have very, very big self-aggrandizing egos. And I'm hoping we don't have that bubble burst to where we find out otherwise. But I appreciate you going in the other room and listening and tuning in. I really do appreciate that. But we all know them. We all know them. John sent me an email, the other end of the spectrum. Rick, you seem fixated on those of us who have worked hard and earned a good sum of money only to give it to the government and to lazy poor people. He's not pulling punches there, John. How about we talk about those people who don't pay any taxes at all and get everything for free from the government? You mean like Jeff Bezos? He writes, don't hear you talk about that often. You mean like Jeff Bezos? Like Elon Musk? You talk about tax fairness? How about the real tax fairness? And tax those people paying nothing. How about getting them to kick in something? This is a really popular right-wing frame. This is one of those things that got to have skin in the game. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Problem is, what if you don't have any skin to put in the game? And this is that Mitt Romney, 47% of people don't pay federal income tax, which then folks like John extrapolate into they don't pay any taxes. Can you believe it? They don't pay any federal taxes. But here's the thing. We know the poorer you are, the higher the tax rate you pay. Because state and local taxes, especially when you're talking the regressive stuff like sales taxes, eat up a much bigger portion of your total income than if you're at the top of the economic scale. Someone like John, the 6% sales tax here in Pennsylvania isn't a big deal. Maybe he makes $100,000 a year. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I generally find folks who brag about how much they make, probably not as much as you think. But someone making $25,000 a year, that's 6%. That's a lot. What we also found out, according to the good folks over at the group, this is one of those things, the Tax Policy Center, that this is what gets me. What we find out is that what Republicans want to do is they want to shift the tax burden. And they've done this masterfully over the years. I talked about this the other day. Mitt Romney didn't raise taxes while he was governor of Massachusetts. He just raised fees. Like I got my renewal for for our truck license plates, for the registration. Went up to $97 for a year. And you go, wasn't it just 50? How did it get so high? Well, we didn't raise your taxes. No, you just raised the fees of everything else. This is what they do. And, you look at how much federal income tax is and how much is paid by all the other taxes. On the federal income tax level, it only makes up about 30% of the taxes collected by all the federal, state, local government. So that other 70%, that's paid by all the working people. So the 47% of people, they're still paying state and local taxes. They're still paying sales tax. They're still paying every other tax. They're just not paying the federal tax because they don't make enough. Those 47% of people, I guarantee you, I'm telling you right now, guarantee you, they would love to pay federal tax because it would mean they'd be making more money. Now, people like John would say, no, we need to lower it. People like Rick Scott would say, no, we need to lower it so more people paying. In fact, that's what the folks over at the Tax Policy Center are saying about Rick Scott's plan. Because congressional Republicans, they want to make working families making less than $54,000 pay more than 80% of the tax increase. So if you're making less than $54,000, you're shouldering the mass of Rick Scott's tax increase. Those making less than $100,000 would shoulder 97% of the tax increase that Republicans are proposing. You're paying it. So John, who's probably making over $100,000 a year, at least I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, or at least he thinks he is, because he's going to get away with this. He's going to walk away scot-free. And you and me and the rest of us who don't make that kind of money, we're picking up the tab for John. How you feel about that, John? I know you're thrilled, right? Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I do answer all emails personally, even the crazy ones, especially the crazy ones. Make sure you grab the podcast. I hear it's fabulous. Gonna take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people have to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1946. That was the day 400,000 bituminous coal miners walked off the job in 26 states. They demanded higher wages, better health benefits, and safety regulations. The strike began to cripple industrial operations nationwide. By May 22nd, President Harry S. Truman seized the mines. Miners returned to work a week later. John L. Lewis, president of the United Mine Workers, signed an agreement with Secretary of the Interior Julius Krug. It included wage increases and vacation pay, the 5-day work week, and contributions to a retirement fund. The strike led to the Promise of 1946, otherwise known as the Krug-Lewis Amendment. It created the UMWA Health and Retirement Funds. It is this fund that is often referred to in present-day discussions concerning the loss of retiree health and pension benefits. According to Robert Hartley and David Kenny, authors of Death Underground, the Centralia and West Frankfurt mine disasters, the welfare program was to provide medical care, rehabilitation treatment, and death benefits. It provided the authority for the director of the U.S. Bureau of Mines to establish a federal mine safety code, to enforce mine safety regulations, and provided the first legal authority for federal inspectors to close mines found to be dangerous. Lack of enforcement would prove deadly for miners in Centralia and West Frankfurt. The health and welfare funds, however, provided relief and security for miners for decades. But in recent years, many companies have gone out of business and found legal loopholes to shed their retirement responsibilities. Those miners affected are today fighting for the passage of the Miners Protection Act, which would provide access and funding to shore up the pension plan. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Keep On Trucking was an iconic underground cartoon created in 1968 by comic master Robert Crumb. Featuring various big-footed men strutting jauntily through life, the caricature became widely popular as an expression of young people's collective optimism. "You're moving on down the line," Crumb later explained. "It's proletarian, it's populist." But today, the phrase has become ironic, for America's truck drivers themselves are no longer moving on down the line of fairness, justice, and opportunity. What had been a skilled middle-class job in the 1960s is now largely a skilled poverty wage job, thanks to the industry's relentless push for deregulation and deunionization, decoupling drivers from upward mobility. Trucking has been turned into a corporate racket, with CEOs arbitrarily abusing the workers who move their products across town and country. To enable the abuse, corporate lawyers have fabricated a legal dodge, letting shippers claim that their truck drivers are not their employees but independent contractors. Thus, hocus pocus, drivers don't get decent wages, overtime pay, workers' comp, Social Security, health care, rest breaks, reimbursement for truck expenses, including gasoline, tires, repair, and insurance, and, as contractors, drivers are not allowed to unionize. This rank ripoff has become the industry standard, practiced by multi-billion-dollar shipping giants like XPO, FedEx, Penske, and Amazon. This is Jim Hightower saying, of course, corporate bosses try to hide their greed with a thin, legalistic fig leaf. Quote, "We believe our driver classifications are legal," sniffed an XPO executive. Sure they are, sport, since your lobbyists write the laws. But might does not make right. Legal does not mean moral, and boss, spelled backwards, is double S-O-B.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So interesting that the January 6th Commission, or the Select Committee, they're ramping up pressure on Merrick Garland to go, hey, take a little time. Maybe speed it up. Maybe get going. How about do something? Don't just sit there. Do something. Because look, and I have some hope that we're not hearing a lot of leaks. So it sounds to me like the lawyers at the DOJ are a little busy, too busy to gossip with reporters. That's a good thing. But how about we speed this up just a touch? Just my thought. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on this, that, and a whole bunch of other stuff, I've asked our good friend Max Burns to come talk with us. Max is a Democratic strategist, also a columnist over at the Daily Beast. He's got tons of columns. He's a busy guy. Got 3 columns out this week that we're going to talk about right now. But Max, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with that. The commission's going. The committee's going. Hey, Merrick, let's step this up a little bit.
Yeah, and this is really frustrating because the actual work that the committee's done so far, the things they've uncovered have been explosive. This 7.5-hour gap in Donald Trump's call records is a monumental smoking gun, but we've not seen that translate into broad public awareness or public anger or public interest, in large part because these cases of contempt are very slow moving. Steve Bannon's is now starting in July. He was charged, I think, originally in October of last year. These grind at such a slow pace, and the committee's frankly running out of time to get all this stuff done before the election.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. I mean, you should have been. I don't know why they're pressuring Merrick Garland. How about looking in the mirror? I mean, and you wrote a great piece that the committee's been less effective than Benghazi because Benghazi they were out there all the time. There was something every day, and in the Republicans' favor, they also did have Fox News and an entire cable news network and right-wing talk radio and an entire echo chamber to get their message out. But still, there was something there.
Yeah, I mean, it's proof that you can make something out of nothing, because even though Benghazi amounted to nothing, it became a political shorthand. We still use it to describe hearings that are heavy on pageantry and short on substance. And it's not just Benghazi. I think if you look historically at all of the great hearings that stand out in history, good or bad, it's because they unfolded on television, they unfolded in front of the American people. And there were these moments of high drama and great storytelling that we've completely lost with this committee, that feels invisible at best.
Yeah. Now you brought up the phone thing, the silence, the burners, the burner phones in the news, and this is the thing that gets me, and this is the thing that I sat and I read the stories about the burner phones and the call logs and all this, and I'm going, we lived through the 4 years of the former guy. The guy was always on the cell phone. Why is it now that we're surprised that he was always going around the Capitol switchboard? Why is that now a story? Why wasn't it back then?
Well, this is really fascinating to me because it's just so uncharacteristic. I mean, we know from other records that the January 6th committee has that people were talking to Donald Trump in this window, that calls were going through, that people were reaching out to Mulvaney, to Jared Kushner, and they were passing on conversations. So it is clearly a cover-up. I mean, there's an individual who is responsible for these logs that works in the White House, who is not a Trump employee, it's a civil servant, who will be able to tell investigators exactly why that gap is missing. I'm surprised the committee hasn't made it a major headline moment to call him in prime time next week and see what he knows.
Yeah, I mean, Nixon got impeached for 18 minutes. This guy's got 457. I'm going, how is it? How is it possible that there are 457 minutes in the middle of any day in the White House? Let me pose this as a question. Do you think in the last, I don't know, how long have telephones been around? In the last 50 years, have there been 457 minutes on any given day where there hasn't been a call logged on any phone in a White House?
Well, especially with Donald Trump, a man whose communications we measured in seconds when he was president. You rarely went 2 or 3 minutes without getting some communication from Donald Trump. And all of a sudden, it's complete radio silence. Nobody remembers seeing him use a phone. No one remembers even being there. It's amazing how January 6th was this big moment of amnesia in the White House. And now that these records are starting to come out, we're starting to see a lot of, not panic, but a lot of increased tension among lower level White House staffers who realize, we should have done a better job covering that up than just deleting 7 hours and replacing it with nothing.
Yeah, well, and then there's the guy who bought the burner phones with the cash and used his CVS card to get the bonus points. Hey, those bonus points, those come in handy, man.
It's never good when your White House so closely resembles a crack house where they're selling lots of drugs and trying to evade being caught doing that. It just seems strange. Everyone's on disposable phones. There are firm laws about keeping presidential records, yet they seem to just find loophole after loophole specifically for that day.
That is the greatest line ever. when your White House resembles a crack. That is great. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show here with Max Burns. Max is a Democratic strategist, also a columnist over at The Daily Beast. Make sure you check out his work over at thedailybeast.com. He's got an article out over at The Daily Beast you can check out now. Republicans are winning the fight against abortion. And we've talked about this a couple of times already, Max. And this is just another one of those things. And you asked the question, where the hell are the Democrats? And I don't know. Where are the Democrats in all this? Because I'm seeing story after story of Republicans. They're fighting the good fight. They're fighting their fight, and they're steamrolling all over women. But where are the Democrats? That's a good question. Where are they?
Yeah, and this is a very fast-moving issue. I mean, week to week, Republicans are making progress in red states to restrict abortion. They're not just talking about it; they're putting it up to vote and they're passing it. And it is almost impossible, in my experience, to get an on-the-record quote from a senior member of the Democratic Party, from people who are on the record being pro-choice, but who will privately say that we need to fight for this as a party, but who will not put their name on the record saying that that is a major issue for them. And that is an alarming sort of disappearing act that Democrats have done on an issue that NBC News just put polling out last week. Voters support by a 31-point net favorable margin candidates who will support Roe versus Wade. It's an issue we win on. It's one of the most successful issues we win on, but you cannot find a Democrat to sell it.
It's one of those things that, where's your spine? And look, this is where this is one of those moments where you're like, I'm not the, abortion's on every street corner. I'm someone who's always been pro-safety. I've always taken the Bill Clinton, they should be safe, rare, and legal. But very pro-safety. This is a common sense, I think, common sense approach. What they're trying to do is they're trying to force women back into back alleys. They're trying to force women into dangerous situations. And I should add the caveat: poor and working class women. We're not talking about the Rockefellers. We're not talking about the Ivanka Trumps. We're not talking about the Liz Cheneys. We're not talking about the wealthy women of this country. We're talking about the poor and working class women who are going to be the ones who suffer here. Because the ones who have the wealth, they're going to be able to go wherever they want. They're going to get what they need. It's the poor and the working class who are going to suffer. And that, to me, is why I find this so just completely outrageous.
Yeah, I mean, ending abortion disproportionately would harm working class women and women of color, Black and brown women. These are three groups that barely rank as human to Republicans as it is. They don't care if they hurt them. And in some cases, the maliciousness is the point, because they feel they've done something morally wrong and need to be shamed, that they need to feel the burn of the state, as one Texas state representative said, for committing murder on a fetus. And it's hard to explain to Democrats in states who are urging the National Party to speak up and to bring Kamala Harris to a state to talk about abortion, to raise some money to help organize this, that Democrats in Washington just don't seem to view this as a crisis.
Man, now look, this is where you put your Democratic strategist hat on. This seems to me to be that issue that really could get people, fired up. You're taking something from women. You're making them desperate. You're putting them, you're having a bunch of men tell them how they're going to live their lives. Look, if men had children, I think you'd have street corner abortions. We'd have drive-throughs. We'd be giving out awards for them. This should be something that's being used to rally the base, not be shoved into a corner, I don't think.
No, not at all. And I think that because this is an issue that Democrats win on, unlike something like policing that's really tough because most voters don't support what they think the Democratic line is, with abortion, voters are with us. So Joe Biden can take fairly bold steps to improve the situation immediately. He could, for example, work with VA hospitals, federally owned hospitals, to create safe spaces in states that ban abortion, for doctors to perform abortion on federally controlled property. That's something that would be a bold move that voters would support. And I don't think Republicans would have a clear, coherent response to it.
Yeah, it's one of these things that just makes you. I don't know. Sometimes it makes me wonder. Let's go to the phone lines. We got Julie on line one. Julie, what's on your mind?
Hi. So thanks for taking my call. I'd like to know what you and your guests think. It may be a year that since this has come up, but there was 2 instances in Texas. One I think was about a year and a half ago, one a year ago, where there were some Texas legislators that wanted to make abortion a capital crime,
right? Which
means, of course, you can give the death penalty to women who have abortions and to the doctor who does the procedure. And so I would like to know, I didn't memorize the legislator's name that took this up about a year ago, but I'm hoping you or your guests will remember this. And anyway, I don't think the American people, I don't think this got out to people that it didn't happen. So abortion is not a capital crime in Texas. But what do you guys think of that? I'll hang up and listen.
I appreciate it, Julie. Thanks so much for the call. Max, this has come up a couple of times. This is the idea that if women have an abortion, that it's a capital crime. We're going to execute. We're going to have public executions of women. This has come up, and it's just recently come up again. This is something that comes around occasionally. This is another one of those things where I go, why aren't women just in the streets losing their minds over the fact that men are trying to control them in a way that I would be going, buddy, go pound sand.
Yeah, and I mean, they were in huge numbers for the Women's March, and they've come out to vote in massive numbers to bring Democrats in. But what we see is that for a lot of people who have lived their entire lives feeling that abortion is a very safe and secure right, that this is still dawning on people that this is really happening. That you can tell what a party's values are by how they behave when they realize they've won. And Republicans have likely won on abortion in the near term with this Supreme Court decision that's coming down. And they're behaving like it. They've taken the mask off. They're pushing bills to execute women for having abortion. They're pushing bills to punish women for leaving the state for reasons they don't like. This is where the Republican Party was always going, and it will not stop with abortion.
Yeah, and chastity belts aren't far behind, man. They're already look at during the Supreme Court confirmation hearings. They were talking about birth control. They were talking about abortion. They were talking about all kinds of stuff that you go, wait a second, this is long decided law. Why are we dredging this stuff up? Why? Because they want to roll back to 20th century. They want, and I say this all the time, they want women barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. They want blacks in the field and gays back in the closet. That's America to them.
Yeah, I mean, make America great again, and they very clearly never specify what century they're looking for. But I think we know. I mean, you can't, not only to introduce, but to rally support around and host a cheering rally for a bill in Texas that would execute teenagers for having an abortion that is, at least as of now, still their legal right as determined by the Supreme Court, the law of the land. And that is not just lawlessness, that's authoritarianism in its plainest form. Yeah, it's making up the law as you go to serve your own interests.
Lastly, I want to get your thoughts on your piece over at the Hill. Just a quick, before I know I got to let you go, but you got Putin's Art of the Deal article yesterday over at the Hill. Walk me through the big deal.
So as you saw, Donald Trump was praising Vladimir Putin again, telling him that if he really wanted to hurt the United States, what he could do is release some of this Hunter Biden information, because the Ukrainians wouldn't. So it's up to Vladimir Putin now to really do it for us. And this is so clearly what Vladimir Putin angles for with Donald Trump. Is Donald Trump gets glowing media coverage in Russia. It boosts his ego. He talks about it at Mar-a-Lago. And that's valueless to Putin. He can manufacture whatever news he wants on his networks. But what he's getting from Donald Trump is this active agent within the United States, a former president, urging our enemies to attack us and giving them tips on how to really drive the knife in. I mean, it's something out of like a Tom Clancy novel.
Yeah, that P-tape's got to be real, man. It's got to be real. I can't think of any other reason, but it is what it is. But Max, I know you got to go. I appreciate the time. Keep up the great work. I look forward to having you back again real soon.
Anytime. Thanks.
Our good friend Max Burns. Make sure you check out the work that he does all over the place. Follow him at Twitter at the Max Burns. We'll get links out on how you do that. Max, appreciate it. Your thoughts after this, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show. For working people, come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1963. That was the day that the New York Times ran the headline, "New York happy as papers return." The longest and largest newspaper strike in the city had ended. During the early 1960s, changes in typesetting technology were transforming how newspapers were made. Members of the International Typographical Union worried the technology would undermine their work. Around 2 in the morning on December 8, 1962, ITU Local 6 called for a strike, demanding improved wages. Members were mostly Irish, Italian, and Jewish men. The newspaper workers at 4 papers, including the New York Times, walked off the job. 3 more major papers feared their workers would join the strike and preemptively locked out their workers. Newspapers were part of the fabric of social life of the Big Apple. In 2009, well-known journalist Nora Ephron described the impact. It was like part of the blood supply of the city was cut off. Funerals in the city saw a dip in attendance as obituaries went unprinted. In all, 17,000 newspaper workers, from typesetters to reporters to elevator operators, participated in the work action. The strike lasted 114 days. 600 million newspapers were not printed. The strike cost newspaper owners $100 million in lost advertising revenue. In the end, the strike was finally settled, and the workers won a wage increase. But they did not win any guarantee against the implementation of new industry technology. A few months after, the newspaper The Daily Mirror closed up shop, blaming the workers and the strike for deepening its existing financial troubles. And not surprisingly, both the Times and the Herald Tribune used the strike as an excuse to double the price of a newspaper from a nickel to a dime.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So, I look at this abortion issue as another one of these things that, from my perspective, and I generally don't like the idea of, I get a little defensive with the whole white male privilege thing. But, this could be another one of those things. Because I'm looking at it going, are you kidding me? You're taking these rights away? The right to determine whether I'm going to have a child or not, whether I'm going to use contraception or not, my right to privacy, whether I'm going to cross state lines, whatever. You're taking, you old white guys, you're taking this from me? I'm livid, and it doesn't even really affect me. I guess, maybe this is something I need a little bit more education on. Just a thought. Let's go to the phone lines. Got Alice on line 2. Alice, how are you?
I'm doing good.
What's on your mind?
Well, the abortion thing. Well, everything. The right wing is just, Republicans in general are ignorant. And I mean ignorant as in uneducated, like your friend that sent the email, talking about the poor people not paying taxes. So he's ignorant of economics. They're ignorant of biology, and they're ignorant of history. They don't understand, or they choose to be willfully ignorant, that, they're claiming, well, it's all about Jesus, and it's in the Bible, and it's murder, and all this, and we're a Christian nation. We're not. And if they studied history, the Treaty of AAA, signed by the second President of the United States, John Adams, specifically stated in there
that we are
that
not a Christian
in no
nation.
way was the United States founded on Christianity.
Yep. But wasn't that Washington? Didn't Washington sign that? Or was it
No,
Adams?
it was John Adams.
Okay.
It was Adams. It was John Adams. But George Washington was a deist. And for the listeners who are not listening, a deist basically was a very liberal Christian who said that, yeah, there's a creator out there. He really doesn't have a name. And he makes everything, winds it up like a clock, and then goes on about his business somewhere else.
Yeah. Not watching you all the time. I got to tell you, when I was a kid, that was always kind of creepy.
Well, yeah, well, that's, there's a lot of mental health issues that can be traced back to religious fanaticism.
There is some truth in that, Alice. You are truthful.
Yeah.
Good thoughts.
So have a good evening.
You as well. I appreciate it. Thanks so much. No, but here's the thing, and this is where I'm looking at this issue of abortion and contraception, and because look, the Republicans are clear. They want to roll back Roe. They want to roll back Griswold. They want to roll back all of these things that gave women opportunities that past generations didn't have. And I remember, the story that my mother told of a friend of hers who went to another state to get a backroom abortion, and it was botched, and I believe the woman died from it. That should never happen. And it's one of these things where okay, so you go to the hospital, you go get a botched backroom abortion, you go to the hospital, now you're going to go to prison or be executed? How about this instead? How about we actually try and do, education policy, make contraception available to everyone. Instead of pushing abstinence only, which is what the right does, because understand, all of this anti-abortion, anti-contraception stuff is really just anti-sex. They just want to punish women for being sexual beings. How about this? We say, fine. Give the woman a choice, have an abortion, or have the man who helped pay for the child. Every dime. And affix a price to it. $30,000 a year, for the 24 years. This way, there's an actual number. We don't do that. Now look, I grew up, my mother was a single mother. I still to this day don't know my father's name. Don't want to. Don't need to. We lived in poverty because of the fact that he was not around. There wasn't that breadwinner. Now you say, okay, fine. You can go off somewhere else, but you're going to pay. Where you put it, you're going to pay. I'll bet you see a change of heart. I bet you see a change, because it's always interesting that those Republicans who were so anti-abortion, when they get someone, well, like they used to say in the old days, in trouble, they tend to go, well, maybe you should get one of those A things. It's interesting how that works out, isn't it? At least I think it is. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you missed any of today's program thus far, thericksmithshow.com is where you get the podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. Quick break, right back, stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people, come to talk.
Germany on Wednesday issued an early warning that it could be heading for a gas supply emergency.
Europe prepares for energy shortages.
I want to understand from you how you reconcile the administration's climate goals right now with what clearly is a shift in posture around energy and fossil fuels.
Biden administration insists climate change remains a priority. Plus, A national transition to electric vehicles would save both money and lives, new study finds.
All of those transitions and more straight ahead, hopefully. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
I'm willing to pay $4 a gallon. Hell, I'll pay $15 a gallon because I drive a Tesla.
How nice for you, Stephen Colbert. Glad you can afford a Tesla. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, the Russian war on Ukraine is not working out as Russia had planned, but it's also going to hurt them, it seems, very much when it comes to the key part of its own economy.
Yeah, and actually there will be pain all around for everyone. The European Union is divided over when and how to enact an embargo on Russian energy imports in order to stop funding Russia's war on Ukraine and free itself from the Kremlin's grip. But Poland announced Wednesday that it is moving ahead and will ban all imports of Russian coal, gas, and oil by the end of this year in order to stop Russia from using energy, quote, as a way to blackmail.
Nice.
Poland's Prime Minister urged other EU countries to move faster to phase out Russian energy, specifically calling out Germany, which has resisted an embargo due to the economic impacts. The German government said this week that Russia told them it won't require countries opposing its invasion of Ukraine to pay for Russian gas with Russian rubles, at least not yet.
Good.
However, Germany officially activated emergency plans to prepare citizens and businesses in the event Russia abruptly halts gas deliveries entirely anyway, and called on them to conserve energy, among other actions. The next phase of Germany's emergency plans likely include gas rationing. Experts say the announcement is a signal to Russia that Germany is prepared for any escalation. Here in the U.S., as we go to air, President Biden is said to be preparing an order to release from the nation's Strategic Petroleum Reserve up to 1 million barrels of oil per day for as long as 180 days to help ease gas prices that have spiked due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Wow, 1 million barrels a day for 180 days?
Yes. U.S. oil producers have refused calls to increase production, saying they are focused on returning cash to investors instead.
Yeah, returning cash to their own pockets. Why should they help when there's profits to be made? It's only a world at war.
Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen countered criticisms that a new agreement between the U.S. and the EU to increase natural gas deliveries to Europe would undercut climate targets. Yellen said there is no escaping the reality that it will take time for Europe to phase out Russian gas while simultaneously bringing new renewable energy sources online. Yellen also rejected calls from some big U.S. banks to hit the brakes on climate policy.
If anything, the problem is that we haven't moved as rapidly as we should have. Europe and the United States would be less exposed to the pressures that this conflict is putting on our energy markets if we had greater reliance on renewables.
A new report from the American Lung Association finds that a nationwide transition to electric vehicles would save both money and lives. A full transition to EVs, if powered by a clean electric grid, would dramatically improve air quality and generate more than $1 trillion in public health benefits, plus save more than 100,000 Americans from premature death caused by toxic air pollution over the next 30 years.
Yeah, but big oil is not going to make big profits.
Finally, a bit of optimism. A new analysis finds that clean energy sources produced more of the world's electricity than coal in 2021, with wind and solar now comprising more than 10% of global electricity for the first time.
That's good.
Plus, the world is on the verge of installing its first terawatt of solar electricity. That's 1,000 gigawatts of solar electricity. According to Bloomberg News, it took decades to get from the first primitive solar panels of the 1950s to reach this milestone, but they report that the second terawatt will come in less than 4 years, with solar and wind energy now the planet's cheapest energy source.
Nice. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, interesting story coming out of New York. Evidently, a judge there has struck down New York's maps. I guess they're saying that the maps that were drawn in New York don't meet the voter-backed constitutional amendment that, again, to end partisan gerrymandering. This is an interesting scenario because they're saying this could, these maps could stay in place. They could end up doing it, redoing it down the road. Going to see where the courts take this, but this could throw the balance of power off in Washington as well, because Democrats could lose a seat or two here because they're the way these are drawn. Interesting times. Now. Move somewhere, a couple hundred miles west of New York. You go to Ohio, where they're having fun with maps too. A little more chaotic. Well, actually, a lot more chaotic. I'm expecting people to go to jail, at least hoping. I would love to see them all rounded up in a big bullpen, locked up, and said, "Here, crayons. You can't come out until you have a map." But here to share some thoughts on just how chaotic and insane the Ohio map drawing fiasco has been, I've asked Susan Tebben to come talk with us. Susan is a reporter over at the Ohio Capital Journal, ohiocapitaljournal.com, their website. She has been following this debacle, this mess, this insanity from the very beginning, and that's why we've got her back to share some more. Susan, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me. I kind of wish I was Steve Kornacki at this point. I had a bunch of, touch screens that I could explain this because there's so many layers.
It's crazy. I mean, how hard is this? The Republicans have a super majority. They easily could draw a map that would make everybody right, and they would still be in complete control. But yet, no, got to squeeze just that one more spot out. Got to get just a little more.
They wouldn't be in complete control. That's part of the problem. They have a supermajority now, and the thing that I think they understand but are not, really dealing with in their minds is the fact that if we undid some of the stuff from the map 10 years ago, then we're not gerrymandering it as much. So we're going to lose some seats. Some Democrats are going to get some seats in places where voters voted that way. So that's part of the problem, is they don't see where they should make any concessions as to why they should lose seats. So,
yeah, those damn voters.
You're right. So you have the most recent maps, the legislative maps, the state house maps that were just passed on Monday. We had independent map makers that came in, one from California, one from Florida. They had done this before. One was picked by the GOP, one was picked by the Dems. They spent 4 straight days, and I was there for 7 days straight watching them do this. They spent 4 days in a room with a camera on them, clicking buttons, doing whatever, watching paint dry, whatever that happens in there, and came out with a map 4 days later that was, as they said, proportional, and moved some seats around and was also compact. Monday was the deadline. The 28th was the deadline for the Ohio Redistricting Commission to have a map back to the Secretary of State and then to the Supreme Court. And it was about, I want to say 9 o'clock on Monday, that the Republican commissioners came back and said, hey, why don't we just bring back the third map that got rejected by the Supreme Court, make a few tweaks, and then send that, because we don't want to be late. So we're just going to, they completely voted down the independent map makers that had been, and that was at a price of $450 an hour.
Wow.
For these 2 map makers. And let's just throw them back this third map, which had, I think, about 3 tweaks to it. which it was still kept their majority pretty much the way it was.
So let me ask a stupid question, because now again, I'm remembering old school Republicans who love to tell us how fiscally conservative they are, how much they care about the taxpayers' money, how when they pick up a quarter, the eagle screams because they use it so judiciously. How much money are we wasting on this? And because I understand you're going to have 2 primaries now, and that can't be cheap.
Yeah, estimates are 2 primaries would be about $20 million. But, it depends on who you ask, because it looks like the 2 primaries that we're going to have is just going to be the legislative races will be the ones in August. All the rest of them, because they couldn't get lawsuits against the congressional maps in time to make it for this May 3rd primary that we're supposed to have. So basically those lawsuits are saying, okay, we can't really make it for the May primary. Let's try the 2024 election. That actually got a lot of criticism. People were not sure why they were just giving up. So you're going to see a lot of things on the May primary, but you're going to have probably an August primary that has the state house races on it. And that's supposed to cost millions and millions and millions of dollars. I mean, because you have to have poll worker recruitment again. You have to, have the venues, do all that stuff.
Wow. I'm so glad Ohio is flush with cash. I'm sure glad your roads are perfect. I'm so glad your schools are fully funded. I'm so glad you've got the best health care in the world. I'm so glad your environment is perfect and pristine. I'm so glad you've got no homeless people and no hungry people. I'm so glad that Ohio is paradise. I'm so glad Ohio is utopia, that you have all this money to just fret away.
I don't know why everyone keeps talking about Hawaii. Ohio has everything. But you were talking about, fiscal Republicans. We've had there's a lot of state legislation, mostly abortion, but a lot of state legislation, a lot of things that state legislators and leaders have done that are stuck in court. And that's costing taxpayers a whole lot of money. And it's not even, a part of law, because judges keep holding these up so that we can have these judges. We have a federal lawsuit right now as well on the legislative races, which was filed by some GOP voters. One of them was a director of Ohio Right to Life, which is a huge anti-abortion lobby here, saying that they didn't have the right to vote because we didn't adopt the 3rd legislative maps, even though they were found unconstitutional. So you have the Secretary of State having to fight in that lawsuit as well, which is costing taxpayer money because he's represented by the Attorney General. So I don't know where they all stand. I'm not even sure how much money we're spending at this point, but it's a lot, and it's got to be more.
Now, again, these are the people who tell us that vote for us because government doesn't work, and we'll make sure it doesn't work. And now they're proving it. See how wonderful they are honoring their campaign pledge.
Right. It's very fascinating to see this go to federal court, because it seems to be against what I was told about Republicans, which is that they didn't want the federal government to do anything for them. And now they're asking the federal court to say, adopt these maps so that we don't have to do this anymore. It's kind of fascinating, actually.
We have fallen deep into the rabbit hole. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're with Susan Tebben. She's a reporter over at the Ohio Capital Journal, ohiocapitaljournal.com, the website if you want to check out the fabulous work that she does. And she's been covering this map debacle from the very beginning. And she's been here on the program several times to keep us up to date. So here's my question. When do we start locking people up? I mean, the threat has been there for a long time. At some point, when I was a kid, if you didn't do your homework, you failed. If you failed enough, they either put you behind or they threw you out. At what point do we do something? There's got to be consequences. There's got to be something. There's got to be some repercussion here. You don't just get to do this over and over and over and keep wasting money and time and energy and you just don't, Susan.
One would think, and you would think a little bit of the punishment would be them having to keep coming back over and over and over and over and over again, and sit in a room together and have to talk about this all the time. I was proposing that we get one of those get along T-shirts that they all have to sit in while they figure this out. But yeah, Monday should be an interesting time, because Monday is when the redistricting commission members have to submit their briefs to the Supreme Court to say why they shouldn't be held in contempt. As you said, this contempt thing came out the last time because they passed the deadline by a week to have these legislative maps the last time. And so the court brought that up, and all of a sudden the maps came a week later, and we didn't drop. They said, we'll reschedule this contempt hearing. Basically, this is still here hanging over you. Let's see if you can figure it out this time.
Let's see if you can do your job. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see Monday and obviously it seems like it will be unsurprising. The responses will be, we got a map done on the deadline. We did what we could. We had the census delays. They keep bringing up the census delays. And even the Secretary of State has said partisan infighting is part of the reason that the May 3rd primary is such a challenge. None of these things are going to be surprising. What's going to be interesting is what the court decides to do about it. If we have a hearing, if they just do it, and they still have to decide if these maps are constitutional or if they're even usable.
So for me, the answer here, because there is an answer, there's always an answer. The answer is the next time folks get to vote, we throw all of them out and we start over again. Clearly, you guys, what's that thing on TikTok they do? You didn't understand the assignment.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines. Clearly, you didn't understand the assignment. It's time to move on. If you didn't understand the assignment, we need to find people who did. And right. We bring those people in. Isn't that how this game is supposed to work? That we, the voters, go, we like people who get things done. We throw people out who don't.
Sure. But part of the problem, as any anti-gerrymandering group in Ohio will tell you, is if we don't have maps that allow us to vote our voices, then we can't vote these people out, and they continue to do what they do. And you do have, I will say, you have supporters, and we've had a few people come into the public hearing saying these people were voted in because Ohio is a red state. Obviously, you have a significant amount of other people that say we're a purple state. This is a swing state, do whatever. But, it's hard to say one way or the other. But yes, that is supposed to be the way it goes, is we vote out people we don't like. It depends on who you ask whether they like them or not.
That's weird. I've driven through it. It's kind of a green state. There's a lot of grass there.
It depends. Yellow, brown.
It depends. Again, when I lived there, was a lot of smog. We had acid rain, a lot of that. Fortunately, because of the EPA, they cleaned up a lot of that. And look, Lake Erie, they used to have fish that swam sideways with one eye looking at the sun.
I think we had a river on fire too, but that was. I
wasn't around back then. That was in the 50s, but still, people remember, or at least they think they do. So, last question I've got for you, since this is going to take this long, how angry are voters going to be? I mean, because look, if I got to go to 2 separate primaries, I got to tell you, if I'm a working person, I'm going to be pretty ticked off, and I think this is going to benefit. And there's part of me that goes, Republicans want that this plays into the Republicans' hands and helps and benefits them in multiple ways. Because one, it's going to lower turnout, which Republicans always do better in lower turnout races. And two, it's going to tick people off, especially working class people who aren't going to be able to get off of work, who aren't going to, they got kids they got to get to do all this stuff. I just see this as strategically part of the plan.
Yeah, and you're talking about primary elections too, which already have a significantly lower turnout than any other election. Yeah, I mean, you see that there have been groups that have come to the meetings that are obviously deep in the weeds about this, and they care very much about this, that are completely angry. They were calling the redistricting commission leaders liars. They were yelling at them. So you have, I think, a pretty good group of people who are fired up about this and think this is absolutely ridiculous. I think you have it on both sides, because we had people that said they were conservatives, people that said they were Republicans, that said, just get something done. We don't even care at this point. You just need to get something done. So you could see an uptick in people that are just ticked off about this. But the other thing is, how many of these people are up for re-election? The governor is. You have a few people, but there's also a bunch that are incumbents that are, going to be sticking around for a while. Hopefully, this will have fired up enough of a voter base, but we'll see. Honestly, everything you said is right. We have a lot of people that can't just call off whenever they need to.
We'll see. Hopefully, in the general, whoever's responsible, all the people responsible, well, they're held responsible. Susan, I appreciate the time. I hope folks will go to the website, ohiocapitaljournal.com. We'll get links out on social media so folks can check out the amazing work that you do and keep up to breast on what you're doing. Great stuff. Thanks so much.
Appreciate it.
Good stuff. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. You're just joining us, make sure you grab the podcast. I hear it's fabulous. You can get it wherever you get your podcast. Just look for the ricksmithshow.com, for the Rick Smith Show, or go to the ricksmithshow.com. Quick break, right back. Stick around. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our Labor History in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I gotta tell you, the map thing is just plain nuts. In Ohio, I mean, just insane. Crazy on how they're getting away with not going to jail. How do you not throw these people in jail? That's the thing. I mean, It really does. It plays into the hands of the Republicans because government doesn't work. Granted, we're the ones who are making it not work. Never mind. My favorite story of the day, one of my favorite, obviously the Amazon victory, my favorite story, but the Herschel Walker thing, kind of interesting. Evidently, for years, Herschel Walker's been doing motivational speaking because he was a heck of a football player, really was. But he does these speeches where he goes around and he claims that he graduated from the University of Georgia in the top 1% of his class. Renaissance man, incredible athlete, boy genius in the classroom. Sounds like a great story until you listen to him, which is one of those things where, because if we evolved from apes, why are there still apes? Think about it. So I was thinking about it, because think about it. You told me to think about it. So I'm thinking about the claim that you graduated in the top 1% of your class. And I'm thinking about it. Problem is, didn't graduate. And I'm going, how is that possible, Herschel? How is it possible that you've been running around for years saying, I graduated top of my class? And then it dawned on me, too many knocks to the head. That's all I can come up with. And I'm not joking. I really think there's some serious things here. Because this guy has said this so many times that I think he even believes it. And this is what's troubling, because he's probably going to win. And Tommy Tuberville is hoping that Herschel Walker wins, so Tommy's no longer the dumbest guy in the U.S. Senate. And that's not even a joke. It's a sad testament to where we are in this country in this moment, where it seems like it's a popularity contest more than it's who's going to actually get things done to make people's lives better. We need actual critical thinkers in the Senate. We need people with integrity. We need people with credibility. We need people who are going to fight to make lives better, not to be ideologically driven Not to be Me Too, folks. Oh, I'm with you. Crazy times. Now, some interesting news coming out of the House. Evidently today the House passed a marijuana. I'm getting two separate, and it could be just the difference of words. They're talking. One says decriminalization, one says legalization. I view them differently because I think they're two different things. Legalization, to me, means it's legal. Now corporate America can grab it, put it on the impulse shelf next to the Tic Tacs or the Doritos or whatever your snack is, and really market the you know what out of it. Decriminalizing it means that, in my view, that hey, if you get caught with it, but we're not going to sell it everywhere. If you have a record, we're going to do away with that so it doesn't ruin your life. And there's some stuff in both stories that make me go, could be either. The decriminalizing side of it says, hey, we're going to go and make sure that people with post-traumatic stress disorders, that they're able to gain access to medical marijuana, and that we're going to use the sales to help do all this stuff. And people who are caught with cannabis in their system are still going to be able to get security clearances for federal jobs, and all that stuff. Not going to be denied federal student loan aid or any student loan, because in this day and age right now, if a high school kid gets caught with a little bit of marijuana, no student aid for you to go to college. How insane is that? Now the legalization side, basically talked about the tax benefits. We're gonna tax it, and there's gonna be part of this. It was passed 220 to 204, mostly on party lines, but you had 3 Republicans who voted in favor of it, 2 Democrats against. The 2 Democrats, the Henry Clark from Texas and Chris Pappas from New Hampshire, Matt Gaetz, Brian Mast, and Tom McClintock from California, the Republicans who voted for it. I'm not for or against it. I've never smoked pot. I'm never going to. Well, maybe if I get cancer and I need to eat, but I've never had that problem of not eating. I see it as if you need it medicinally, great, good for you. I have friends who use it medicinally, fine. My problem is that we were at a concert recently and it was literally everywhere. And I can't stand the smell of it. But we're heading down that path. It will at some point be legalized everywhere, and there's a lot of questions about it. People with CDLs, how are you then going to regulate that? I worry that we're rushing a little quick into it, but at some point we've got to at least decriminalize it. And I've always been in favor of decriminalizing it because it's, for this we've ruined lives and millions of lives. I've known people over the years who have lost job opportunities, who have sadly had their lives ruined because of one minor drug conviction when they were younger, and then getting these things expunged for years were very difficult. It's a little easier these days, but years ago it was damn near impossible. So the fact that we're moving forward and trying to do away with some of that stuff, I think that's a good thing. I'm not so sure about full legalization. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Should we have pot vending machines? Should it be everywhere? Should it be on the impulse aisle there next to the Tic Tacs, or next to the Doritos? It would be good for sales. I think it would be good for sales, especially in the junk food aisle. Or so I'm told. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you're just joining us, make sure you grab the podcast, take the program on the go. Quick break, right back. When we come back and talk about the big Amazon victory, I think this is a huge, huge win. Back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2 on On this day in labor history, the year was 1963. That was the day that the New York Times ran the headline, "New York happy as papers return." The longest and largest newspaper strike in the city had ended. During the early 1960s, changes in typesetting technology were transforming how newspapers were made. Members of the International Typographical Union worried the technology would undermine their work. Around 2 in the morning on December 8, 1962, ITU Local 6 called for a strike, demanding improved wages. Members were mostly Irish, Italian, and Jewish men. The newspaper workers at 4 papers, including the New York Times, walked off the job. 3 more major papers feared their workers would join the strike and preemptively locked out their workers. Newspapers were part of the fabric of social life of the Big Apple. In 2009, well-known journalist Nora Ephron described the impact. It was like part of the blood supply of the city was cut off. Funerals in the city saw a dip in attendance as obituaries went unprinted. In all, 17,000 newspaper workers, from typesetters to reporters to elevator operators, participated in the work action. The strike lasted 114 days. 600 million newspapers were not printed. The strike cost newspaper owners $100 million in lost advertising revenue. In the end, the strike was finally settled, and the workers won a wage increase. But they did not win any guarantee against the implementation of new industry technology. A few months after, the newspaper The Daily Mirror closed up shop, blaming the workers and the strike for deepening its existing financial troubles. And not surprisingly, both the Times and the Herald Tribune used the strike as an excuse to double the price of a newspaper from a nickel to a dime.
Keep On Trucking was an iconic underground cartoon created in 1968 by comic master Robert Crumb. Featuring various big-footed men strutting jauntily through life, the caricature became widely popular as an expression of young people's collective optimism. "You're moving on down the line," Crumb later explained. "It's proletarian, it's populist." But today, the phrase has become ironic, for America's truck drivers themselves are no longer moving on down the line of fairness, justice, and opportunity. What had been a skilled middle-class job in the 1960s is now largely a skilled poverty wage job, thanks to the industry's relentless push for deregulation and deunionization, decoupling drivers from upward mobility. Trucking has been turned into a corporate racket, with CEOs arbitrarily abusing the workers who move their products across town and country. To enable the abuse, corporate lawyers have fabricated a legal dodge, letting shippers claim that their truck drivers are not their employees but independent contractors. Thus, hocus pocus, drivers don't get decent wages, overtime pay, workers' comp, Social Security, health care, rest breaks, reimbursement for truck expenses, including gasoline, tires, repair, and insurance, and, as contractors, drivers are not allowed to unionize. This rank ripoff has become the industry standard, practiced by multi-billion-dollar shipping giants like XPO, FedEx, Penske, and Amazon. This is Jim Hightower saying, of course, corporate bosses try to hide their greed with a thin, legalistic fig leaf. Quote, "We believe our driver classifications are legal," sniffed an XPO executive. Sure they are, sport, since your lobbyists write the laws. But might does not make right. Legal does not mean moral, and boss, spelled backwards, is double S-O-B.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
As I said earlier, the quote of the day, or the quote of the week. We're gonna, and my man of the year, Chris Smalls. We want to thank Jeff Bezos for going to space, because while he was up there, we were organizing a union, and yes, they won the election. And at Amazon there in Staten Island at the JFK 8 warehouse. And look, I believed that they were going to win there. Because look, if you were going to win anywhere, it should have been there. Because the culture in New York, I believe, all of these should already be unionized. It shouldn't have taken this long and been this Herculean of a leap, in my view. But here to share some thoughts on maybe I'm wrong. I've asked our good friend Shaun Richman to come talk with us. Shaun is my go-to labor guy. He's a labor scholar, also a professor at SUNY Empire State College, contributing writer over at In These Times, and the author of the fabulous book, Tell the Bosses We're Coming, a new action plan for workers in the 21st century. Shaun, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me. I gotta confess on the front end, I'll everybody's celebrating this thing. Everybody's gonna sort of retroactively change their narrative. I said nothing publicly, but privately, I didn't think they would win. I think the laws are too stacked against workers in these cases. The amount of resources that the company was bringing to bear, the horrible role that the cops on Staten Island played. And the fact that they consciously went without having the backing of an international union, all just sort of pointed to another really close but still like dispiriting loss. The win is massive and very encouraging, and it's gonna cause, it has to cause a lot of soul searching within the labor movement about what they did right and what other unions are not doing right. Not to cast blame, but like I do think that the organizing model as was developed in the Reagan era needs some revisiting, because times have clearly changed.
No, absolutely. But here's the thing, the model that they pursued is what I believe that you have to do. You have to be local. You have to be engaged. You have to build a community. You have to be on the ground. And they were part of that community. And as I said from the beginning, I thought they were going to do well, because if there's anywhere you're going to do well, it's got to be New York, because the culture is already that of a union kind of culture. Bessemer, Alabama, a little bit heavier of a lift. Center of the country, probably a little bit. But in places where you already have a pretty sizable union density, I see you doing okay.
No. I mean, I live on Staten Island. No? I mean, yeah, no. You've got all kinds of union members who can just rationalize away why, it makes sense in my case, but not for you. And again, I mean, the cops that were arresting Smalls outside the facility are union members, and I have no shame about turning around and asking for solidarity whenever they feel like they're in a jam. Teachers and firefighters and any other unionized worker here, we all have our Amazon Prime membership, and a lot of people just, easily buy into the boss arguments about how, man, that 2-day turnaround is important, and well, what if this slows it down? So no, that goes nowhere. There's no reason why workers in the deep south at Amazon couldn't win. In fact, there's all the more reasons why maybe they should win than around here, where it's we're big and we're establishment, but we tend not to be movement as much as our numbers belie.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that New York has about 24% union density. I think the last number I saw somewhere in that range. The fact that union members, the fact that you see people who are in unions and their lives are better, that they get better wages, better conditions, that is an enticing thing. That if you're in a campaign, that the lies that the bosses are telling you, that you have examples around you, that you're going to go, oh no, I don't believe that because I see something different. That's my point of view. Now,
yeah, except almost none of the union members that you're surrounded by, none of your neighbors, almost none of them actually had to fight for their union, right? And that's the key difference. You don't have that experience. So it gets back to your original point that this does seem to have been, from what I'm reading from what the workers are now putting out on Facebook and Twitter, this was a very worker-centered, one-on-one conversation, worker organizing committee, talking to themselves. And this is like the one of the things that we need to grapple with, right? Like, the Boss campaign works because it's a campaign of intimidation and psyops and and threats and retaliation. I mean, Smalls was fired, right?
Right.
But one of the things that makes it effective is the fear of the unknown. And so workers who have to go through this trial by fire to win this election, get to the bargaining table, and even then, there's long odds that they're going to win a contract, right? Like 50% of new units don't wind up with a new contract. You have to feel like it's worth it, and you have to feel like you're empowered within it. And that, I think, is one of the things that work to their advantage here, right? And this is a place where a lot of unions, I think, cut corners in the organizing conversation and in the organizing model. That there's a lot of conversations about what bargaining is going to look like, and even, well, is it going to be a separate local, or is it going to go into a local 2233, right? And it's like, oh, we'll figure that out later. It's like, no, the workers actually want some guarantees on the front end. They want to know that these decisions aren't going to get taken out of their hand. A prime example, one of the main things that bosses will hammer at in these captive audience meetings is, we're not going to give you anything. You're not going to win anything unless you go on strike. And the union can make you go on strike. And if you go on strike, we're going to fire you, right? It's like it's that rap. And for a lot of people, that the union is going to make you go on strike is scary. And it's like a training issue for staff organizers, but it's such common sense that when you have an organizing committee and you empower them to be like, how are we going to make you go on strike? You're only going to go on strike if you all agree that a strike makes sense. Nobody can make you go on strike.
Right. In
the case of this independent Amazon labor union, right? They just turn to each other like, I can't make you go on strike. We only go on strike if we agree we're going to go on strike. Kills that message from the Boss campaign.
Right.
And so there's a lot of messages in the Boss campaign that were effectively killed by the fact that this was this worker-led independent movement. They didn't have to answer for anything else. They didn't have to explain where Jimmy Hoffa is buried, any of that nonsense that you get in any other campaign. Not that I want to draw the wrong lessons from that, but it is interesting that they won free and clear, and in Bessemer, it's going to go down to the challenged ballots. It's going to go down to appeals, and it's going to drag out. I hope that the workers won in Bessemer as well, but it's less of a resounding victory as it was at JFK 8.
Now, this is all part of what I've talked about for years. This idea of the union being the center of the community, of being a whole community in and of itself, and this is how they organized. That you relied on each other, that you didn't have someone come in and do for you, you did for yourself. And I think that's the important part of this. And when I did some organizing, one of the things that they did hammer on is you've got to empower people to know that they were doing the organizing themselves. You were just there to help guide and facilitate and answer questions, not actually do anything for them. And I think this group they did that. I think they did the right things.
They did it. I think that there is a badly needed conversation within the labor movement. I would dearly love to watch the Afl-Cio lead it, to revisit our organizing model, because every union tells their staff organizers that exact thing that they told you, but how many actually follow through on it? To be incredibly fair, like, it's this terrifying thing when you're a staff organizer. It takes years to get the kind of zen of like, well, at the end of the day, is actually in the workers' hands. Like, my job is just to give them the information they need. And like, why am I so afraid that if they see the same crazy charts on the wall that I have, if they see the same power maps, if they understand the law as well as I do, why would they come to a drastically different conclusion than we have about what it's going to take to win? But at the end of the day, it doesn't happen way too often. Most union organizing campaigns are still very staff driven. Organizing committees are paper committees. It's I took 10 cards and I handed out to my coworkers. Great, you're a 1. We're going to call you committee. But it's not a deeply meaningful organizing committee where like that committee has real veto power over go or no go points in the campaign. Are we going public tomorrow or not? Are we doing a public petition or are we doing cards? Are we marching on the boss? What time are we marching on the boss? Is it 10:30 a.m.? Is it 5 o'clock in the afternoon? And it's a little bit frustrating, that there's science on this. Kate Bronfenbrenner has been doing research on this for 40 plus years about what it takes to win. And one of the key things that she shows is that a successful union campaign, it's almost like I think it's like a 10% increase in the likelihood of winning if you build the bargaining campaign, the actual contract demands, and even electing the bargaining committee into the campaign before the union election vote happens. Instead of kicking the can down, it's like, oh, we'll figure that out later. Again, workers need to feel empowered in these campaigns, or else, the entire point of the boss's campaign is to frustrate and to scare and to make you feel like it's hopeless and worthless and all that.
Well, yeah, because you got to know what you're fighting for. I mean, that makes perfect sense. Because you got to know exactly what it is you're fighting for. That makes a lot of sense. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're with Shaun Richman. Shaun's a labor scholar at SUNY Empire State College, contributing writer over at In These Times, and the author of the fabulous book "Tell the Bosses We're Coming: A New Action Plan for the Workers of the 21st Century." We'll get links out on social media how you can pick up that fabulous book. But here's the thing: you mentioned, you alluded to it a little bit earlier about getting a contract. I had people going, "Hey, we won! Amazon's got a union." Well, they won the election. The contract is going to be a little bit more challenging because, as you pointed out, probably half to a little over half don't actually get contracts. How do you see this playing out?
All eyes have to be on this, and again, the fact that they're independent is a real gift to us, because this is going to play out in public in a way that most contract bargaining doesn't happen. Because apparently they've got an attorney from some local OPU unit who's like doing this pro bono. They're doing this on their own.
Yeah,
the boss is going to refuse to bargain. The boss is absolutely going to refuse to bargain. They've already telegraphed that they're going to appeal. They're going to challenge the election. We should be very, very prepared for they will threaten or actually shut down JFK8. Because one of the things that Amazon has done, if you look at the way that they've sort of spread out across the country, they have saturated these centers, right? It kind of blows my mind that this center is called JFK8. It's on Staten Island. Meanwhile, Newark Airport is a stone's throw away. Why isn't it EWR3? There's so many of these centers that they could easily close one and it wouldn't affect the 2-day turnaround on packages. And we should fully expect that they're either going to threaten to or actually do it. All eyes have to be on this. This is what's going to reveal just how broken our labor law system is. And every politician that is tweeting their congratulations right now, there needs to be real repercussions for Amazon for any of their next steps that doesn't involve getting to the damn table and meeting with Smalls and a democratically elected committee of the workers at JFK8.
Now, this is where I go back to the Obama era. And I tell the story often of how, twice I shook President Obama's hand, candidate Obama's hand. Softest hands I've ever met, seen on a human being. If I had hands like that, I'd never leave the house. Told me twice we were going to get something better than the Employee Free Choice Act. Did not get anything. But had we gotten something that I believed was as weak as the Employee Free Choice Act, could have helped here, because it did have that first contract arbitration part of it.
The hell with the Employee Free Choice Act. I think that
it's over. But had we got it just as weak as that was,
it would have done nothing. The new general counsel at the NLRB, Abruzzo, has a much better approach. There are so many things that are and always have been under the control of the NLRB that shame on us, the labor movement writ large, that we have not employed these board strategies earlier, right? Strike replacement. The brilliant idea of the Afl-Cio under Lane Kirkland in the first year of the Clinton administration was, well, let's legislatively fix the McKay Supreme Court decision that says if you go out on an economic strike, the boss can hire a bunch of scabs and they can permanently take your jobs. Cockamamie decision, made up whole cloth. And the entire time the NLRB has had the leeway to constrain that to the point where it's meaningless, because you're only allowed to, an employer is only allowed to permanently replace its workers on strike if they can prove that it's not in any way anti-union animus, and that it's not that it is necessary to protect and continue their business. Okay, well, you're a multi-billion-dollar corporation. How is replacing 500 workers necessary to protect and continue your business? Open up your books and prove it, please. Right. But the anti-union animus even is the NLRB has a very narrow definition of it now. It's only if there's a statutory unfair labor practice charge. But here in New York, the cable company Spectrum, which was Time Warner Cable, new company bought it. They bought themselves a union. They bargained that union to impasse over draconian cuts, like goodbye pension, goodbye, Buick level health insurance plan, and steep wage cuts. Forced them out on strike and quickly brought in a bunch of scabs. Don't tell me the goal there wasn't to bust the union. Don't tell me that they should not have been allowed to permanently replace those workers. The NLRB should have stepped in and said, no, you can hire replacements. Sure, you can hire scabs, but they can't permanently replace them. You're not allowed to do that. And so there's a lot of ways in which the general counsel is weighing in here. And I think that this JFK 8 is going to be really a testing ground for a lot of the things that this general counsel wants to do. We might get real bargaining orders out of here. Smalls' termination, they want, at the moment, statutorily, the law says that if you're fired for union activity, basically you get your job back, and that you're entitled to the money that you should have been paid minus what you made doing anything else in the interim. Correct. That's all you get. This general counsel wants to broadly expand the make whole remedy, so that anything else that, we have lives here. If you're not getting a paycheck, you might miss a mortgage payment. You might get foreclosed upon. You might miss a car payment. You might lose your car. That starts to get calculated in to what the boss owes you. Because at the end of the day, the only way we're going to stop bosses from breaking the law is if it costs them, and it costs them nothing at the moment. It costs them less than nothing. It's almost, there are lawyers out there who say that you're basically practicing, it's malpractice if you don't tell your client, well, break the law. There's no financial, it's going to cost you more to follow the law, and I'm doing a disservice to you as your attorney if I tell you to follow this law like a Boy Scout or something.
No, so that's where we should be paying our attention. And look, I love the fact that she's there, and some of the things that she's brought up, like the Joy Silk doctrine that, most people haven't even, thought of in decades.
I didn't even think about it in my book. You look at the index, there's no Joy Silk. It wasn't even on my head. It's like, oh, great, good idea. Forgot about that.
Yeah, I mean, and this is where, for years I've been saying, how come we can't? Now, fortunately, moving in a more in a direction, and I think it's going to come back to. So, last question I've got, because you've got a new leadership of the Teamsters who have, they've said we're going to organize Amazon. You've got the RSDWU. They're hell bent on organizing Amazon. What lessons, real quick, what lessons should they take from this?
I think unions have to be way more open to chartering brand new local unions. You have to, when you're taking on a large employer like this, or even a small employer, you have to give these workers some guarantee of democratic autonomy so that they're willing to go through that trial by fire. And I think that's a critical mistake that we've made starting in the 1960s. We basically, 1990s rather. We tried to capture all of the revenue that goes to local unions. We tried to get local unions to match the international union, put a bunch of money in the pot, and it's like, oh, let's organize Amazon into, local I'm not going to give numbers here. I'm terribly tempted to. But local unions have a job, and that's basically to deliver the goods for their existing members, to get good successor agreements to their existing contracts, and for the local leaders to get elected to the membership that they know and that knows them. You got to clean the slate there. Nobody is going to, no international union, RWDSU, Teamsters, UAW, if they decide that the A stands for Amazon, nobody's going to organize Amazon without guaranteeing the workers a significant degree of democratic autonomy. That, I think, means each facility needs its own local, and that there needs to be some sort of bargaining council structure, and they need to know that they're choosing the bargaining reps, and that they get to decide, all the steps that go along to ULPs and strikes and everything else. I'm afraid that might be a heavy lift, and again, that's why I think that we badly need a revisit of the organizing model conversations that took place under Sweeney in the mid 1990s. There was a big push there where every labor center, all colleges were involved, all these scholars were involved. Sweeney invited all these people that got cast out from the House of Labor, all these left-wing dissidents. It was a great moment. I was a kid, I missed it. But there was a real sort of let's put it all on the table and there's no sacred cows. And then we just sort of, this is the plan, and we've sort of stuck with it almost in a zombie state. And that was a different century ago. It's time to do that again.
Yeah, it's time to take advantage of this moment of people and the anger that they have and the want to organize and move forward. At least I'm hoping. But Shaun, I appreciate the thoughts. Great stuff.
All right. Thanks for having me. Take care.
I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Tell us what you think. Is this the future? Will we see another Amazon victory? I think this is an incredible moment. I think there's an opportunity for, as Shaun pointed out, local individual places to do what Chris Smalls and those folks in Staten Island did. In their local workplace, in their spot, organize together and create something there. I think Shaun's right. I think it's going to be a heavier lift to get them to adhere to the old model. I do think it's going to be a struggle, and for the new Teamster leadership coming in, we had the last administration's guy on the I think his name was Randy Corrigan, and he had an idea. We're gonna organize Amazon, and they had a path that they wanted to follow, and it was a lot of peer-to-peer stuff, and that sounded great. But it seems still like a top-down. I think what the stories that we heard coming out of Staten Island was, look, these were the workers who were doing it themselves, and they weren't being directed so much. I'm in a Twitter room with some of the people who are working on this, and you saw some of the conversations. You saw some of the direction. But good on them. But like you said, it's going to be interesting to watch how the contract negotiations goes on, and if they get that first contract. Because they won today, they won, and Amazon is going to fight this at every step of the way. Whether they get that first contract, that's going to be the bellwether. Love to hear your thoughts, though. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you've missed any of today's program, make sure you download the podcast. Always available, always there, wherever you get your podcast, from iTunes to iHeart, Podbean to Stitcher, and everywhere in between. Always there. Make sure you share it with your friends, coworkers, even those that, not so fond of. Maybe they'll learn something. Also, follow us on social media, Twitter @RickSmithShow, Facebook, YouTube. Like, share, subscribe. Absolutely subscribe. Never miss a moment. Thanks for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working